Michael Jackson had everything the world could offer: fame, money, and global admiration. But behind the applause was a pressure few could survive. This is the story of the moment fame took control, and the years that followed. Michael Jackson didn't become a legend overnight. And he didn't fall overnight either. There was a moment, not a concert, not a scandal, not a trial, but a quiet turning point when fame stopped being a dream and started becoming a cage. In the early 1990s, Michael Jackson was untouchable. He wasn't just the biggest pop star on the planet. He was larger than any celebrity who had ever existed before him. Every move he made became global news. Every silence became a headline. Every rumor became truth before he could deny it. But behind the sold-out stadiums and perfect choreography, Michael was already losing control of his own life. For the first time, the spotlight no longer followed his music. It followed him. Where he slept, who he trusted, what he feared. The same fame that once protected him was now slowly turning against him. Michael had grown up inside studios, rehearsal rooms, and tour buses. He never experienced a normal childhood. And as an adult, he tried to build one in private. But the world wouldn't allow it. In 1993, something shifted. Not in the charts, not in ticket sales, but in how the media spoke about him. The headlines changed tone. The jokes became cruel. The curiosity became obsession. And for the first time, Michael Jackson wasn't being watched because people loved him. He was being watched because people wanted to see him break. This was the beginning of his darkest period. A time when every appearance felt forced. Every smile felt heavier. And every step felt like it was being judged by millions. What most people don't realize is this: Michael didn't collapse under pressure. He endured it silently. And the cost of that endurance would follow him for the rest of his life. This is the story of the moment when Michael Jackson's life stopped being his own, and why the world never saw him the same way again. After that turning point, Michael Jackson's world began to shrink. Not physically, he was still traveling, still performing, still appearing in public. But emotionally, trust became rare. Privacy disappeared completely. And the pressure of being Michael Jackson became heavier than ever before. The media no longer treated him as an artist. They treated him as a mystery to be solved or exposed. Every detail of his appearance was dissected. His voice, his face, his silence. Instead of asking how someone survives that level of fame, the world asked a darker question: what's wrong with him? And once that question entered the conversation, everything changed. Paparazzi followed him relentlessly. Cameras waited outside his homes. Speculation replaced facts. Michael learned a painful lesson. The louder he stayed silent, the louder the world spoke for him. Behind closed doors, the stress took a toll. Sleep became difficult. Anxiety became constant. The calm he once found in music was no longer enough. Doctors were brought in to help him rest, to help him recover, to help him function. At first, it felt like relief. But relief slowly turned into reliance. Michael was still expected to perform at the highest level imaginable. To move perfectly, to sing flawlessly, to appear timeless. And the cost of meeting those expectations was growing. Meanwhile, the headlines grew colder. Stories were no longer about innovation or influence. They were about suspicion. About whispers. About doubt. The man who once united millions through music was now being slowly separated from the world that loved him. Yet Michael didn't stop trying. He continued creating. He continued appearing. He continued giving the public the version of himself they demanded. But inside, something fundamental had changed. Fame was no longer a source of power. It was a force he had to survive. And the more he tried to hold everything together, the more fragile his world became. This wasn't a collapse, not yet. It was something quieter, more dangerous. It was the slow erosion of control, and the realization that escaping the spotlight might be impossible. As the pressure intensified, Michael Jackson found himself trapped between two impossible realities. On one side was the world's expectation, perfection without weakness, brilliance without rest, greatness without limits. On the other was a human body and mind that had been stretched far beyond endurance. By the mid-1990s, Michael was living in constant survival mode. Public appearances felt rehearsed, not because he wanted them to be perfect, but because any mistake would be magnified instantly. A single photograph could spark weeks of headlines. A single gesture could be turned into a narrative he had no control over. The joy that once fueled his performances began to fade. Music had always been his refuge, the place where he felt safest. But now even music carried pressure. Every new release was expected to outperform history. Every project had to justify his legacy. There was no room to simply exist. Behind the scenes, exhaustion was taking its toll. Physical pain became a daily companion. Insomnia followed him wherever he went. And the solutions offered to help him cope only deepened the problem. What began as medical assistance quietly became dependence. Michael wasn't seeking escape, he was seeking balance. Sleep. Silence. Relief from a mind that never stopped racing. But the line between help and harm blurred quickly. At the same time, isolation grew stronger. The circle around him became smaller and less trustworthy. Too many people relied on his success. Too few were willing to challenge decisions that clearly carried risk. Fame had created a barrier between Michael and honest feedback. He smiled in public. He reassured fans. He promised new music, new performances, new beginnings. Yet privately, fear had become constant. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of losing control completely. Fear that no matter what he did, the story had already been written for him. This period wasn't marked by one dramatic collapse or public breakdown. It was marked by something far more dangerous: endurance without recovery. Michael kept going when most people would have stopped. He carried expectations no human being should ever bear. And each year, the weight grew heavier. By the time the world began to sense that something was wrong, Michael Jackson was already running on empty. And the moment when everything would finally catch up to him was closer than anyone realized. By the late 2000s, Michael Jackson knew something had to change. Years of pressure, isolation, and survival had drained him physically and emotionally. But one thing remained untouched: his desire to be remembered for who he truly was. Not the headlines. Not the rumors. Not the speculation. The music. The art. The magic. This is why the announcement of this is it mattered so much. To the public, it looked like a triumphant return. 50 sold-out shows in London. A global comeback. Proof that Michael Jackson was still the king of pop. But behind the scenes, the reality was far more fragile. Michael wasn't chasing fame anymore. He already had more fame than anyone in history. What he wanted was control over his story, his legacy, and his final chapter. Rehearsals were intense. Michael demanded perfection, just as he always had. He wanted every movement, every note, every moment to reflect the artist he believed himself to be. For brief moments, the old spark returned. Those who watched him rehearse saw flashes of brilliance that reminded them why the world had fallen in love with him in the first place. But the cost was enormous. His body struggled to keep up with the demands placed upon it. Years of exhaustion and dependency had weakened his resilience. Sleep was rare. Rest was never enough. The systems meant to protect him failed to recognize just how close he was to the edge. Michael was pushing forward on willpower alone. What makes this final period especially tragic is its intention. Michael wasn't trying to escape his past, he was trying to close it on his own terms. He wanted the world to see him not as a broken figure, but as an artist reclaiming his voice. He never got that chance. Michael Jackson's story didn't end because of one decision or one mistake. It ended because a lifetime of pressure, expectation, and isolation finally became too much for one person to carry. His darkest years weren't defined by scandal. They were defined by endurance. And when we look back now, the question isn't how Michael Jackson failed to survive fame. The real question is how anyone could have survived it at all.
For most of the world, Michael Jackson was the definition of success. Fame beyond imagination. Records that will never be broken. Stadiums filled with screaming fans. A name that became bigger than music itself. But behind the global image of the king of pop, something far darker was quietly unfolding. By the early 1990s, Michael Jackson had reached a level of fame no human being was ever meant to handle. He wasn't just popular, he was untouchable. Every move he made became global news. Every rumor, every appearance, every change in his face or behavior was dissected, judged, and sensationalized. Privacy no longer existed. Trust became impossible. What most people don't realize is that Michael's darkest years didn't begin with scandals. They began with exhaustion. Years of relentless touring, perfectionism, and pressure had already taken a massive toll on his body and mind. Michael was known for pushing himself far beyond human limits. He slept little. He rehearsed endlessly. He demanded perfection, especially from himself. Pain became a normal part of his daily life. And that pain led to something dangerous. During tours and performances, Michael began relying on prescription medication to cope. At first, it was about managing physical pain. Later, it became about escaping emotional pressure. The world saw a superstar. Michael felt trapped inside a machine that never stopped demanding more. At the same time, the media narrative around him began to change. The press that once praised him now searched for cracks. His appearance became headlines. His lifestyle became speculation. His personality became mockery. Stories were written not to understand him, but to sell outrage. Slowly, the world stopped seeing Michael Jackson the artist, and started seeing Michael Jackson the target. This constant scrutiny pushed him further inward. Michael withdrew from public life. He isolated himself in places like Neverland, trying to recreate the childhood he never had, a childhood stolen by fame before he could understand what fame even was. And this isolation made him vulnerable. Surrounded by yes men, lawyers, advisors, and people who depended on his success, Michael struggled to find anyone he could truly trust. Decisions were made around him, not always for him. The pressure didn't fade, it intensified. By the mid-1990s, the man who once lit up the world with joy was quietly breaking under the weight of his own legend. And the darkest years were only just beginning. By the mid-1990s, the pressure surrounding Michael Jackson reached a breaking point. Fame had already isolated him, but now it began to actively work against him. The media no longer treated him as a musical genius, they treated him as a spectacle. Headlines became darker. Stories became crueler. And nuance disappeared completely. Every aspect of Michael's life was now fair game. His changing appearance was mocked relentlessly. His voice, his mannerisms, even his friendships were questioned. Instead of asking why the most famous person on earth might be struggling, the world chose something easier: suspicion. Then came the moment that changed everything. Accusations emerged that instantly shattered Michael Jackson's public image. Before facts could be established, before any investigation could reach conclusions, the media had already decided the story. News channels ran the same images on loop. Tabloids printed the same headlines again and again. Michael Jackson was no longer a person, he was a narrative. And that narrative sold. What followed was one of the most aggressive media storms ever directed at a single individual. Cameras chased him relentlessly. Reporters camped outside his homes. Every court appearance became global entertainment. Guilt was implied, assumed, and repeated, regardless of legal outcomes. For Michael, this wasn't just public humiliation. It was psychological destruction. He watched as decades of work, generosity, and artistic contribution were reduced to scandal. People who once celebrated him now distanced themselves. Radio stations hesitated. Brands pulled back. Silence replaced loyalty. Behind the scenes, the toll was devastating. Michael's anxiety intensified. His sleep became irregular. The medications that once helped him cope began to control him instead. Trust eroded further. Every interaction felt transactional. Every smile felt forced. He lived under constant fear, fear of betrayal, fear of misrepresentation, fear of never being believed again. Yet despite everything, Michael continued to work. He released music. He performed. He appeared in public with a fragile smile, carrying the weight of judgment wherever he went. To the outside world, this looked like resilience. In reality, it was survival. What made this period especially dark was the contradiction at its core. Michael Jackson was still one of the most famous people alive, yet he had never felt more alone. And while the media moved on to the next headline, the damage done during these years never truly healed. Because once the world stops seeing you as human, there is no easy way back. As the years passed, the scars from the media onslaught never faded. Instead, they reshaped Michael Jackson's life in ways few people truly understood. Publicly, he was still Michael Jackson, the legend, the icon, the performer whose name alone could fill arenas. Privately, he was struggling to regain control over a life that no longer felt like his own. The pressure didn't just affect his reputation. It affected his body. Michael lived with chronic pain for years, the result of intense performances, injuries, and exhaustion. To function, he relied increasingly on prescription medications. What began as medical treatment slowly turned into dependence. Sleep became difficult without chemical help. Calm became impossible without assistance. And the line between managing pain and escaping reality blurred. At the same time, Michael faced another challenge: fear. Every public appearance felt dangerous. Every interview felt like a trap. Words could be twisted. Gestures could be misinterpreted. Silence itself could be used against him. So Michael withdrew even further, limiting his circle to a small group of people who promised protection, guidance, or stability. But isolation has a cost. Without honest voices around him, Michael began to lose perspective. Decisions were made in survival mode, not long-term clarity. Financial pressure mounted as legal battles, settlements, and cancelled projects drained resources that once seemed infinite. The empire built over decades now required constant maintenance just to stay afloat. Still, Michael refused to disappear. He attempted comebacks. New music. Carefully planned appearances. He wanted to remind the world of who he truly was, not the headlines, not the rumors, but the artist. Yet every attempt was overshadowed by the past. The narrative had already been written, and rewriting it felt impossible. What makes this period especially tragic is that Michael never stopped caring. He cared about his fans. He cared about his music. He cared about being understood. But caring in a world that has already judged you can feel like screaming into silence. Behind closed doors, those closest to him noticed the change. The joy that once defined him appeared less often. Laughter became rare. Trust became fragile. Fame, which had once lifted him higher than anyone else, now acted like a cage with no exit. These weren't just difficult years. They were years of constant internal battle, between the man Michael was, and the symbol the world had turned him into. And as time moved forward, that battle would lead him toward one final attempt to reclaim his legacy. By the late 2000s, Michael Jackson stood at a crossroads. Years of pressure, controversy, and isolation had taken their toll, but the desire to be seen, truly seen, had never left him. He didn't want sympathy. He wanted redemption. Not in courtrooms or headlines, but where he had always felt most alive, on stage. The announcement of the "This Is It" concerts was meant to be a turning point. To the public, it looked like a triumphant comeback. 50 sold-out shows in London. A global spotlight. Proof that Michael Jackson was still the king of pop, fans celebrated. The world watched closely. But behind the scenes, the reality was far more fragile. Michael was not the same man he had been decades earlier. Physically, he was exhausted. Years of stress, pain, and reliance on medication had weakened his body. Rehearsals were intense, demanding the same perfection that had always defined him. Michael pushed himself relentlessly, determined to prove that he still had it, that he had never lost it. Mentally, the weight was crushing. The comeback wasn't just about music. It was about rewriting history. About silencing doubts. About reclaiming control over a narrative that had slipped away years before. Every rehearsal carried the pressure of a lifetime. Every missed step felt like confirmation of the world's worst assumptions. Those around him saw flashes of the old Michael, moments of brilliance, creativity, and passion. But they also saw something else: fear. Anxiety. A man running on willpower alone. Sleep was rare. Rest felt impossible. The balance between ambition and survival was gone. What makes this final chapter especially tragic is its intention. Michael wasn't chasing fame anymore. He already had it. He was chasing closure. He wanted to leave the stage on his own terms. To be remembered for the music, the movement, the magic, not the years of scandal and pain. "This Is It" was supposed to be his statement to the world: this is who I really am.
January 31, 1993. Pasadena, California. The Rose Bowl Stadium. More than 90,000 people are inside the arena. Over 110 million viewers are watching from their homes. America expects football. America expects commercials. America expects noise. Instead, the stadium goes quiet. From the tunnel, a single figure steps onto the field. Black pants. A gold military jacket. Dark sunglasses. He stops at the 50-yard line. And he does nothing. No music. No movement. No words. 5 seconds pass. 10. 20. Cameras hesitate, unsure where to cut. Producers whisper urgently in control rooms. The crowd begins to murmur. This is live television. Every second costs millions of dollars. Silence is the enemy. But the man on the field remains perfectly still. 30 seconds. 60. People at home lean closer to their screens. No one changes the channel. No one looks away. Because instinctively, everyone understands the same thing. This is not a mistake. This is deliberate. 90 seconds pass. Then, suddenly, he snaps his head to the side. The crowd erupts. In that instant, Michael Jackson proves something no one in television had ever dared to test before. Attention does not come from noise, it comes from control. This was not a concert. This was not a halftime show. It was a declaration. And from this moment forward, the Super Bowl would never be the same again. Before 1993, the Super Bowl halftime show was not designed to be watched. It was designed to be ignored. For decades, halftime meant marching bands, themed performances, or safe musical acts chosen not to offend anyone. The goal was simple: fill time while viewers left the room. And they did. Every year, television ratings dropped sharply during halftime. Millions of people changed channels. Millions more went to the kitchen or bathroom. Advertisers hated it. Networks accepted it as unavoidable. By the early 1990s, this problem had grown dangerous. Cable television was exploding. Remote controls made switching channels effortless. Viewers had options, and they used them. Executives began to realize something uncomfortable. The Super Bowl was losing control of its own audience. The game itself still dominated. Commercials were cultural events. But halftime was a weakness. Then someone inside the NFL asked a question that changed everything. What if halftime became the reason people stayed? What if, instead of background entertainment, it became a moment no one dared to miss? The answer required more than a popular singer. It required someone who could command attention instantly across generations, races, and borders. At that moment in history, there was only one person on earth with that power: Michael Jackson. He was not just successful. He was unavoidable. His music videos premiered like movie releases. His image defined an era. Even people who didn't buy his albums knew exactly who he was. The NFL understood the risk. If Jackson failed, the failure would be public and humiliating. If he succeeded, the entire format of halftime would be rewritten. Michael Jackson agreed to perform, but only if he could do it his way. And his way would terrify everyone involved. From the beginning, Michael Jackson made one thing clear. This would not be a normal halftime show. NFL executives expected compromises. Shorter songs. Safer staging. Predictable spectacle. Jackson rejected all of it. He demanded full creative control. No marching bands. No distractions. No constant movement to hold attention. Instead, he proposed something no one in television had ever approved before. Silence. Producers were horrified. Silence meant danger. Silence meant viewers could leave. Silence meant ratings could collapse in real time. In live television, silence is treated like a technical failure. Executives warned him repeatedly. They begged him to start immediately. They argued that even 10 seconds without music was too long. Michael Jackson refused. He understood something the networks didn't. People don't leave when they're curious. They leave when they're bored. Silence creates tension. Tension creates focus. On the field, everything was designed with precision. The military-style gold jacket was intentional, commanding, and iconic. The sunglasses created distance, turning him into a symbol rather than a person. The stillness transformed the stadium into a waiting room. Even the cameras were part of the experiment. Close-ups were delayed. Wide shots emphasized scale. Every second increased anticipation. When rehearsals were filmed, executives panicked. Watching it back, they were convinced the plan would fail. But it was too late to change anything. On the day of the game, Michael Jackson walked onto that field knowing exactly what would happen. The audience wouldn't look away. And when he finally moved, they would explode. Because the silence wasn't empty. It was controlled. And control was the real performance. When the first notes finally hit, the reaction was instant. The silence shattered. Michael Jackson launched into jam, and the stadium exploded. The crowd screamed. The cameras locked in. The energy shifted from tension to release in a single second. This wasn't just excitement. It was relief. For 90 seconds, the audience had been holding its breath. Now they exhaled together. Jackson moved with mechanical precision. Every step was sharp. Every turn was calculated. There was no wasted motion. Then something unprecedented happened behind the scenes. Instead of dropping, television ratings rose. For the first time in Super Bowl history, more people were watching halftime than the game itself. Networks watched in disbelief as numbers climbed. People weren't leaving. They weren't changing channels. They were calling friends. They were turning up the volume. They were staying. Michael Jackson continued through Billie Jean and Black or White, each song amplified by the scale of the moment. When he stood on the stage and extended his arm outward, pointing toward the crowd, the gesture became iconic. Not because it was complex, but because it was confident. This wasn't entertainment begging for attention. This was authority. By the time children joined him on the field and the performance ended with "Heal the World," the message was clear. Halftime was no longer a break. It was the main event. Every executive in the NFL understood what had just happened. They had witnessed the future of live television. And it had been rewritten by one performer who understood attention better than anyone else alive. The impact of Michael Jackson's halftime show was immediate and permanent. The very next day, NFL executives began rewriting their entire strategy. Halftime was no longer filler. It was no longer optional. It became the most valuable stage in American entertainment. Before 1993, performers were invited to the Super Bowl. After Michael Jackson, they were auditioned. Only the biggest names were considered. Only artists capable of commanding absolute attention. In the years that followed, the league pursued global superstars. Prince, U2, Madonna, Beyoncé, Bruno Mars. Every one of them was chasing the same benchmark. The moment Michael Jackson set. But none of this was accidental. Jackson understood something fundamental about mass attention in the modern age. People don't remember noise. They remember moments. They remember stillness before movement. Silence before sound. Anticipation before release. The NFL also learned another crucial lesson. Music could unite audiences the game itself could not. Football appealed to fans of the sport. Michael Jackson appealed to everyone. Different races. Different ages. Different countries. The Super Bowl was no longer just an American event. It became a global broadcast. Merchandise sales surged. Album sales spiked worldwide. Dangerous returned to the top of the charts. But more importantly, the rules of live television had changed. Attention was no longer won by volume. It was won by confidence. Michael Jackson didn't overpower the audience. He controlled it. And from that moment on, every major live broadcast, not just the Super Bowl, tried to replicate what he had done. Most failed. Because they missed the real lesson. Many artists have performed at the Super Bowl since 1993. Some were louder. Some were more complex. Some used more technology, fireworks, and spectacle. But none of them recreated what Michael Jackson did that night. Because they misunderstood the source of his power. It wasn't the scale. It wasn't the budget. It wasn't even the music. It was authority. Michael Jackson walked onto that field as if the entire stadium already belonged to him. He didn't ask for attention. He assumed it. Most performers try to impress the audience. Jackson didn't need to. He controlled time itself. By standing still, he forced millions of people to wait. In a culture addicted to constant stimulation, waiting became revolutionary. Later halftime shows focused on excess. More dancers. More screens. More explosions. Jackson focused on restraint. Even his choreography was minimal by his standards. No complicated routines. No constant movement. Just sharp gestures placed with precision. That night worked because it wasn't designed as a concert. It was designed as a moment. And moments can't be copied. They exist once in a specific time, with a specific audience, under specific cultural conditions. In 1993, America was ready for something bigger than football. It was ready for a shared experience. Michael Jackson understood that instinctively. He didn't fill halftime. He redefined it. More than 30 years have passed since that night in Pasadena. Technology has changed. Television has changed. Attention spans have collapsed. And yet, that moment still stands. Not because it was flashy. Not because it was loud. But because it revealed a truth about human attention that remains unchanged. People don't follow what screams the loudest. They follow what commands silence. Michael Jackson didn't compete with the Super Bowl. He absorbed it. For 90 seconds, football disappeared. Advertising vanished. Time slowed. In today's world of endless content, that achievement feels almost impossible. Modern performers chase virality. Algorithms. Instant reactions. Jackson operated on a different level. He understood psychology before social media existed. He understood tension before analytics measured it. He understood that confidence creates gravity. That is why this performance is still studied by producers, marketers, and media strategists decades later. Not as entertainment, but as a lesson. A lesson in presence. A lesson in control. A lesson in restraint. The Super Bowl halftime show is now the most watched musical stage on earth. Artists spend years preparing for 12 minutes. And all of it traces back to one man standing still on a football field. Michael Jackson didn't just change halftime. He proved that in a world full of noise, the most powerful weapon is knowing when not to move.